The sky above Desha Prime burned orange and red. Great ships hung in the darkness of space, their weapons firing down upon the planet below. Each blast shook the ground and turned. Beautiful crystal towers in the dust and ash. Ambassador Rillin stood in the communication center, her translucent body trembling with each new explosion. She was old for her kind, nearly 300 cycles, and she had never seen war. No, Valari had. Her people were scholars and artists. They built libraries and composed music. They studied the stars and wrote poetry about the light between galaxies. They did not fight. They did not know how. Ambassador, the shields over the eastern continent have failed, said a young technician named Talik. His crystalline form flickered with fear, the light inside him growing dim. The Cathari ground forces are landing. Rillin closed her eyes. The Cathari Dominion had come without warning. Their warlord, a creature called Zithan, had demanded complete surrender. When the Valari asked for time to discuss, the bombardment began. Have we received any response from the Galactic Coalition? Rillin asked. Talik's fingers moved across the communication panel. Yes, Ambassador. The peacekeeping fleet has acknowledged our distress signal. They say they are 17 cycles away. 17 cycles. Nearly 3 weeks in human time. Rillin looked at the burning sky through the window. They would all be dead in hours. Is there no one closer? She whispered. Talik checked every frequency, every registered ship in the nearby sectors. Nothing. The Cathari had chosen their moment well. The coalition was spread thin across the galaxy, dealing with a dozen small conflicts. No one was coming. Then Talik stopped. His body brightened slightly, a sign of confusion among his people. Ambassador, I am receiving something strange. What is it? A signal. From an unregistered sector. Talik worked to clean up the transmission. It is coming from the Sol system. Rillin felt something cold move through her. Every species in the galaxy knew about the Sol system. It was quarantined, forbidden. The third planet from that yellow sun was a nightmare world that had somehow produced intelligent life. Earth, home of the humans. The Valari had learned about humans in their schools. They came from a planet with crushing gravity, nearly 10 times what the Valari could survive. Their atmosphere was filled with a corrosive gas called oxygen. Their world was covered in salt water that would dissolve Valari flesh. They had evolved alongside terrible predators, and they had killed them all. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and countless wars against each other. The humans were monsters. That was what everyone said. When they had first made contact with galactic civilization 200 years ago, the Coalition had taken one look at their history and quarantined them immediately. Too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable. And now someone from that forbidden world was sending a message. Play it, Rillin said. Talik hesitated. Ambassador, the quarantine protocols. Play it. The static filled the room, and then a voice came through. It was deep and rough, speaking in a language the translation system struggled with. Finally, the words became clear. We hear you. Hold on. We're coming. Rillin stared at the communication panel. That is all? Yes, Ambassador. The signal has ended. Above them, another explosion shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling, glittering in the emergency lights. Rillin thought about what she had just heard. The humans were coming. The Deathworlders. The quarantine monsters that the entire galaxy feared. Perhaps they did not understand our message, Talik said hopefully. Perhaps they think we are asking for trade negotiations. Rillin shook her head. They understood. They said to hold on. That is not what you say to a trading partner. That is what you say to someone who is drowning. But why would they help us? They do not know us. We are nothing to them. I do not know. R'lyn moved toward the window and looked up at the Cathari fleet. 180 warships, bristling with weapons, crewed by warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds. I do not know why they would come. I only know that someone answered our call. Talik joined her at the window. What do we do now? We hold on. That is what they asked us to do. In the shelters beneath the city, millions of Valari huddled together. They were afraid. Their children cried, and their elders tried to comfort them with old songs. The ground shook again and again as the bombardment continued. In the communication center, R'lyn began to send new orders. Every shield generator would be pushed to maximum power. Every shelter would be reinforced. They would not surrender. They would not give up. They would hold on. Far across the galaxy, the message from Desha Prime had reached Earth 3 hours ago. In a vast underground facility beneath a mountain range, men and women in uniform moved with purpose. Screens showed tactical data, ship positions, and jump calculations. A tall man with gray at his temples stood at the center of it all. His name was Jack Morrison, and he had been a soldier for 30 years. He had fought in the last war on Earth, the one that had finally united humanity. He had buried friends and enemies alike. He had sworn that he would never fight again, but then the message had come. Somewhere out there, people were dying. They had called for help, and no one was coming, except Earth had heard. And Jack Morrison could not ignore it. How many ships do we have? He asked. A young woman at a nearby console answered. Her name was Kate Marsh, and she was the best navigator in the fleet. 37, Commander. 3 actual warships. The rest are retrofitted mining vessels and research cruisers. And the enemy? Based on the signal analysis, at least 150 capital ships. Possibly more. Morrison nodded slowly. The odds were terrible. Most of his crews had never seen combat. Their ships were held together with patches and prayers. They had no allies, no support, and no idea what they were flying into. But someone had called for help. Tell the fleet to prepare for launch, Morrison said. We jump in 2 hours. Kate Marsh looked at him. Commander, the quarantine. The quarantine can go to hell. Someone out there is dying, and they ask for help. Where I come from, that means something. He turned and walked toward the door that would lead him to his ship. Behind him, the room burst into activity. Orders were given. Engines began to warm up. Crews ran to their stations. Humanity was going to war. And the galaxy was about to learn that the Deathworlders did not ignore a cry for help. The U's Valor hung in the darkness above Earth, its hull gleaming under the light of the sun. It was not a beautiful ship. It was angular and rough, covered in armor plates and weapon mounts. It looked exactly like what it was, a machine built for war. Commander Jack Morrison stood on the bridge, watching through the main viewport as the rest of the fleet assembled. 37 ships, ranging from the massive bulk of the Valor to the small, fast shapes of converted scout vessels. It was everything humanity had. All ships report ready for jump, said Lieutenant Kate Marsh from her navigation station. She was young, barely 30, with short dark hair and steady hands. Morrison had chosen her because she never panicked. In the hours ahead, that would matter. Engine status? Morrison asked. Chief Engineer Danny Cole's voice came through the intercom. He was down in the engine room, surrounded by machines that he understood better than any living person. The slipspace drives are holding steady, Commander. I won't promise they'll survive the jump, but I think we've got a good chance. Define good chance. Maybe 70%. Morrison almost smiled. Danny always told the truth, even when lies would be more comfortable. Good enough. What about the weapons? Lieutenant Pete Navarro answered from the weapons station. He was a large man with thick arms and a calm voice. Before joining the fleet, he had been a demolition expert. He understood explosions the way poets understood words. All systems green, Commander. Hellfire missiles loaded and ready. Point defense is online. We're as ready as we're going to be. Morrison nodded and turned to face the crew. The bridge was small, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Every person there had volunteered for this mission. They knew the risks. They knew they might not come home. Open a channel to all ships, Morrison said. Kate pressed a button. Channel open, Commander. Morrison took a breath. He was not good at speeches. He was a soldier, not a politician. But these people deserved to know why they were about to risk their lives. This is Commander Morrison, he began. In a few minutes, we're going to do something that humanity has never done before. We're going to leave our solar system and enter galactic space. We're going to break the quarantine that has kept us isolated for 200 years. He paused, looking out at the fleet. Some of you are probably wondering why. We don't know these Valari. We've never met them. They're not our allies, our friends, or our family. They're strangers on the other side of the galaxy. But they called for help. And no one else is coming. Morrison thought about his own life. The wars he had fought. The friends he had lost. The world he had helped to rebuild. Humanity had spent thousands of years hurting each other. They had come close to destroying themselves more than once. But they had also learned something in all that time. They had learned that the only way to survive was to help each other. I know what the galaxy thinks of us, Morrison continued. They think we're monsters, Deathworlders, too dangerous to be trusted. Maybe they're right. Maybe we are dangerous. But I'd rather be dangerous and kind than safe and cowardly. He looked at the stars beyond the viewport. Someone out there is dying. Someone called for help. And we're going to answer. Not because we have to. Not because we'll gain anything from it. But because that's who we choose to be. All hands, prepare for slip space jump. Morrison out. He closed the channel and sat down in his command chair. Around him, the bridge crew worked in silence. Kate checked the navigation calculations one more time. Pete ran final diagnostics on the weapons. Everyone was focused, professional, and ready. Dr. Amy Reyes entered the bridge. She was the ship's xenobiologist, a small woman with glasses and a quiet voice. She had spent her entire career studying alien species from a distance. Now she was about to meet them in person. Commander, I've prepared briefing materials on the Valari and the Cathari, she said, handing him a tablet. The Valari are a Category 7 species. Extremely fragile, completely non-violent. They communicate through light patterns and harmonic frequencies. They'll probably be terrified of us. And the Cathari? Amy's expression darkened. Category 4. Aggressive, territorial, militaristic. They've conquered 43 worlds in the last century. They're bigger than us, stronger than us, and they have much better technology. Weaknesses? They're arrogant. They've never lost a war. They won't expect anyone to challenge them, especially not a quarantined species from a death world. Amy paused. But Commander, I have to be honest. Our chances are very low. Their ships are faster, better armed, and better shielded. We're going into a fight we probably can't win. Morrison looked at the tablet in his hands. The Valari looked like living crystals, beautiful and delicate. The Cathari looked like nightmares, all sharp edges and dark scales. We're not going to win by being stronger, he said finally. We're going to win by being crazier. They've never fought humans before. They don't know what we're capable of. And what are we capable of? Morrison handed back the tablet. Anything we have to be. The countdown reached 0. Across the fleet, slip space drives activated. Reality twisted and bent as 37 ships punched holes in the fabric of space itself. The stars stretched into lines of light dot, and then they were gone. The journey through slipspace was strange and unsettling. The viewports showed nothing but swirling colors that hurt to look at. The crew stayed at their stations, monitoring systems and waiting. Ganny Cole worked constantly in the engine room, keeping the drive stable through sheer willpower and engineering skill. 2 ships experienced minor failures and had to drop out of the formation. They would catch up later. If there was a later dot in her small cabin, Amy Reyes reviewed everything humanity knew about alien psychology. She tried to imagine how the Velari would react when humans appeared in their sky. Would they see rescuers or invaders? Saviors or monsters? She hoped they would give humanity a chance to explain. On the bridge, Morrison sat in silence, thinking about what was coming. He had fought many battles in his life. He had killed enemies and watched friends die. He had never gotten used to it. "Commander," Kate said softly, "we're approaching the exit point. 60 seconds to normal space." Morrison stood. "All hands, battle stations. As soon as we exit slipspace, we're in the combat zone. Weapons free on my command." The crew acknowledged. The tension on the bridge was thick enough to cut. Everyone knew that the next few minutes would determine whether they lived or died. 10 seconds, Kate counted. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The swirling colors of slipspace vanished. The stars returned. And directly ahead, the planet Desha Prime hung in space, surrounded by fire and death. The Cathari fleet was everywhere. Morrison counted over 100 warships, their weapons raining destruction on the world below. The planet's shields flickered weakly, barely holding. "Commander," Pete said, his voice tight, "I'm reading 183 enemy vessels. They've seen us." Morrison looked at the burning planet. Somewhere down there, millions of innocent beings were dying. They had called for help, and humanity had answered. "Open a channel," Morrison said. "Let them know we're here." The Deathworlders had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. The Cathari fleet was retreating, but the battle was not over. On the surface of Desha Prime, enemy ground forces were still fighting. They had landed before the human fleet arrived, and now they were trapped on a world they could no longer escape. Commander Morrison studied the tactical display on the Valor's bridge. Red dots showed Cathari positions across the eastern continent. Blue dots showed Velari population centers, including the capital city, where millions of civilians were huddled in shelters. "The ground forces are digging in," said Kate Marsh. "They know they can't be extracted. They're going to cause as much damage as possible before they're stopped. Then we stop them now." Morrison turned to the communication officer. "Get me to use Horizon." "Commander, Lisa Vance." A moment later, Lisa's face appeared on screen. She was about Morrison's age, with gray streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen too much war. The Horizon was one of the 3 actual warships in the fleet, built for ground support operations. "What do you need, Jack?" Lisa asked. "Drop pods. I need soldiers on the ground as fast as possible. The Cathari are moving toward civilian centers. We have to get between them and the Velari." Lisa nodded without hesitation. "My Marines are ready. Give me 10 minutes to get into position." "You have 5. Morrison out. The Horizon moved toward the planet, its hull still smoking from battle damage. In the ship's launch bay, 47 men and women in powered armor checked their weapons and sealed their helmets. They were the best soldiers humanity had, volunteers who had trained for years for a mission they never expected to happen. Sergeant Ben Torres was among them. He was 35 years old, broad-shouldered and quiet. He had grown up in a small town, joined the military to see the world, and ended up seeing the stars instead. This would be his first real combat mission. "Sergeant," said Private Maria Santos, a young woman with nervous eyes. What do we do when we get down there? We've never fought aliens before. Ben checked his rifle one more time. Same thing we'd do anywhere else. Find the enemy. Protect the civilians. Don't die. That's simple. Combat is always simple. Staying alive is the hard part. The drop pod sealed. The bay doors opened. And 47 human soldiers fell toward an alien world. The descent was violent and fast. Ben felt the G-forces press against his chest, trying to crush him. Warning lights flashed as the pod's heat shield burned away. Through the tiny viewport, he saw the sky change from black to orange to blue. Then the pod slammed into the ground, and everything went white. When Ben's vision cleared, he kicked open the hatch and emerged into chaos. The Valari capital was burning. Crystal towers had collapsed into rubble. Strange plants with glowing leaves smoldered in craters. The air smelled wrong, too sweet and too clean. All units report, Ben said into his helmet radio. One by one, his squad checked in. Everyone had survived the drop. They gathered at the rally point, a plaza near the center of the city. In the distance, they could hear weapons fire and screaming. Movement ahead, said Private Carlos Rivera, checking his scanner. Cathari patrol. 20 hostiles. They're moving toward a civilian shelter. Ben made a quick decision. We intercept. Move fast. Stay quiet. Take them down before they know we're here. The squad moved through the ruined streets. The Valari buildings were beautiful, even in destruction, all curves and light and crystal. It was like running through a dream. They found the Cathari patrol near a collapsed bridge. The aliens were big, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in dark scales and carrying weapons that crackled with energy. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never met anything stronger than themselves. Ben raised his hand. His squad stopped. He counted the enemy, chose his targets, and gave the signal. The humans opened fire. Cathari died before they knew what was happening. Human weapons were loud, crude, and absolutely deadly. Bullets punched through alien armor. Grenades exploded in alien faces. Within 30 seconds, the patrol was dead. Private Santa stared at the bodies. We did it. We actually did it. Don't celebrate yet. Ben reloaded his weapon. There are a lot more where they came from. Let's move. They reached the civilian shelter 5 minutes later. It was a dome of reinforced crystal, half buried in the ground. The Valari had built it to withstand earthquakes, not war, but it was still standing. Ben approached the entrance carefully. He did not want to frighten the people inside. Hello? We're from Earth. We're here to help. Silence. Then, slowly, a section of the dome became transparent. On the other side, hundreds of Valari huddled together. They were beautiful and strange, their bodies made of living crystal that flickered with inner light. They looked terrified. One of them, smaller than the others, moved toward the entrance. A child. Its light was dim and flickering, a sign of extreme fear. Ben removed his helmet. He knew he looked strange to them, maybe even monstrous. Soft skin, small eyes, flat teeth. Nothing like the graceful beings inside. He knelt down so he was at the child's level. Hey there. It's okay. We're not going to hurt you. The child did not understand his words, but it seemed to understand his tone. It stopped trembling. The light inside it grew a little stronger. Ben reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar. It was just compressed nutrients, standard military food, but it was all he had. He held it out to the child. Slowly, very slowly, the child reached out and took the bar. It turned the strange object over in its crystalline hands, examining it. Then it looked up at Ben with something that might have been curiosity. That's right, Ben said softly. We're friends. We came to help. Above them, the battle continued. The UES Horizon had taken critical damage while providing cover for the drop pods. Commander Lisa Vance stood on her burning bridge, watching systems fail one after another. "Commander," said her first officer, "we've lost main propulsion. Life support is failing. We need to abandon ship." Lisa looked at the tactical display. A Cathari straggler ship was heading toward the civilian zones, probably trying to cause as much damage as possible before it was destroyed. The Horizon was directly in its path. "Get the crew to the escape pods," she said. "Commander?" "That's an order. I'm going to give that ship something to think about." The bridge crew evacuated. Lisa stayed at the helm, alone. She aimed the Horizon at the approaching enemy vessel and pushed the engines to full power. The ship groaned, shook, and surged forward. The Cathari ship tried to evade, but it was too late. The Horizon slammed into it at full speed, both ships erupting in a ball of fire that lit up the sky. On the ground, Ben Torres saw the explosion. He did not know what had happened, but he knew that someone had just given their life to protect the people he was guarding. He stood and faced his squad. "We hold this position. No matter what comes, we do not let anything happen to these people." "Understood?" "Yes, Sergeant." They spread out around the shelter, weapons ready. In the hours that followed, 3 more Cathari patrols tried to reach the civilians. None of them succeeded. By the time the sun set on Nesha Prime, the last enemy forces had been eliminated. The battle was over. In the shelter, the Valari child still held the ration bar. It had not eaten it. Instead, it clutched it like a treasure, a gift from the strange creatures who had fallen from the sky. Ben sat outside the entrance, exhausted. His armor was dented and scorched. His muscles ached. But when the child came to sit beside him, watching the stars appear in the alien sky, he smiled. "You're safe now," he said. "I promise." The child did not understand the words, but it understood the promise. Some things did not need translation. Warlord Zithan stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, watching the bombardment with satisfaction. The Valari shields were failing. Their cities were burning. In a few more hours, the planet would belong to the Dominion. It had been too easy. The Valari had no weapons, no warriors, no will to fight. They had begged for mercy, offered treasures and knowledge, promised anything if the Cathari would just stop. Zithan had laughed at them. Mercy was for the weak. The strong took what they wanted. "Warlord," said one of his officers, "the eastern shields have collapsed. Ground forces are landing now." "Excellent. Tell them to secure the capital. I want the ambassador brought to me alive. I will enjoy watching her beg." Zithan turned back to the viewport, imagining the glory that awaited him. Another world conquered. Another species enslaved. His name would be remembered for 1,000 cycles. Then the alarm started screaming. "What is happening?" Zithan demanded. The officer stared at his console, confusion and fear mixing on his scaled face. "Warlord, we are detecting unknown contacts. They just exited something. Not standard faster than light travel. Something different." "How many?" 37. Zithan laughed. 37 ships? He had 183. This was not a battle. It was an inconvenience. "Identify them." The officer worked his console. "Warlord, I cannot identify them. They are not in our database. Their ships are primitive. Metal hulls. Chemical propulsion systems. Very low technology." Low technology? Zithan moved to look at the console himself. The sensor readings made no sense. These ships had no shields he could detect. Their weapon signatures were strange and unfamiliar. They looked like something from a primitive age. Where did they come from? The Sol System, Warlord. Based on their trajectory. Zithan felt a cold sensation in his gut. So, the quarantine system. The Death World. The humans, he said quietly. Every species in the galaxy knew about the humans. They were monsters, predators who had clawed their way to intelligence through endless violence. They lived on a world that should have killed them 1,000 times over. They breathed poison. They drank acid. They felt no pain, at least. That was what the story said. But they were also quarantined, contained. They had primitive technology and tiny numbers. They could not possibly threaten the Cathari Dominion. Open a channel to them, Zithan ordered. Let me see what these Deathworlders want. A moment later, the main screen flickered. A human face appeared. It was the first time Zithan had ever seen one in real time. The creature was ugly by Cathari standards, with soft pink skin and strange hair on its head. Its eyes were small and forward-facing, the eyes of a predator. This is Commander Jack Morrison of the Terran Expeditionary Force, the human said. Its voice was calm and steady. The Valari are under our protection. You have 60 seconds to power down your weapons and withdraw from this system. Zithan stared at the screen. Then he began to laugh. You threaten me? With 37 primitive ships? He spread his arms wide. I have 183 warships. I have conquered 100 worlds. And you dare to give me orders? The human did not smile. Its expression did not change at all. 50 seconds. You are insane. You are nothing. Your entire species is nothing. When I am finished here, I will visit your little death world and burn it to ash. 40 seconds. Zithan was not used to being ignored. Rage built in his chest. Destroy them, he ordered. All ships, target the human fleet. Show them what happens to insects who challenge the Dominion. His fleet began to move. 183 warships turning their weapons toward 37 primitive vessels. It would be over in seconds. Time's up. The human said, and then the universe exploded. The human missiles came out of nowhere. Zithan's sensors had barely detected them launching before they were already hitting his ships. They moved faster than anything the Cathari had ever seen, streaking across space like angry stars. The first missile hit the cruiser Dominance. It punched through the shields like they were not there. It punched through the armor like it was paper. Then it detonated inside the ship, and the Dominance became a ball of expanding fire. 11 more ships died in the next 3 seconds. What is happening? Zithan screamed. How is this possible? His officers were shouting, trying to coordinate a response. The Cathari fleet was in chaos. They had expected an easy victory, not a real fight. They had never faced an enemy who struck first, struck fast, and struck without mercy. The human fleet was moving now. Those ugly, primitive ships were accelerating at speeds that should have killed their crews. They were weaving through Cathari formations, taking hits that should have destroyed them, and firing back with weapons that ignored shields entirely. Kinetic weapons, one of the officers gasped. They are using physical projectiles. Our shields are designed for energy weapons. The projectiles pass right through. Zithan watched in horror as another of his ships exploded. Then another. Then 3 more. On the bridge of the Valor, Commander Morrison watched the battle unfold. His crew was performing brilliantly. Kate Marsh was flying the ship through maneuvers that pushed the limits of human endurance. Pete Navarro was choosing targets with deadly precision. Danny Cole was keeping the engines running, despite damage that should have disabled them. Commander, Kate said, the enemy is attempting to regroup. They're forming a defensive formation around their flagship. Good. They're scared. Morrison studied the tactical display. They had destroyed 24 enemy ships in the first 5 minutes. But they had lost 2 of their own, and several more were badly damaged. They could not win a prolonged fight. We need to break their will, Morrison said. Target their flagship. Show them that their leader is not safe. Commander, Pete replied, their flagship is heavily shielded. Our kinetic weapons will take time to penetrate. Then give me a different option. Amy Reyes spoke up from her station. Commander, the Cathari are a hierarchical species. If their leader falls, the entire fleet will become disorganized. They won't know what to do. Can we reach him? Not directly. But we could disable his ship. Force him to call for help. The humiliation would be devastating to Cathari culture. Morrison nodded. Pete, target their flagship's engines. I want that ship dead in space. With pleasure, Commander. A new wave of missiles launched from the human fleet. They were smaller this time, designed for precision rather than destruction. They slipped past the Cathari defenses and slammed into the Eternal Conquest's engine section. The flagship shuddered. Its lights flickered, and then it went dark. Zithan felt his ship die around him. The engines were gone. Life support was failing. His flagship, the symbol of his power, was now a drifting hulk. Warlord, one of his officers said, "What do we do?" Zithan looked at the viewport. The human ships were circling like predators, picking off Cathari vessels one by one. His fleet was falling apart. His warriors were dying. He had underestimated the Deathworlders. He had thought they were primitive. He had thought they were weak. He had been wrong. The human commander's face appeared on the screen again. Still calm. Still steady. Like he had done this 1,000 times before. Your flagship is disabled, Morrison said. Your fleet has lost 40% of its strength. You can continue fighting and die, or you can retreat and live. Choose now. Zithan's hands shook with rage and fear. He wanted to fight. He wanted to destroy these humans and their ugly ships. But he was a warlord because he was smart. He knew when a battle was lost. All ships, he said, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. Retreat. Fall back to Dominion space. The Cathari fleet began to withdraw. One by one, the warships turned and fled, leaving their dead behind. In a matter of minutes, the space around Desha Prime was empty except for the human fleet and the burning wreckage of battle. Morrison watched them go. He felt no triumph, only exhaustion. They had won. Somehow, impossibly, they had won. Open a channel to the planet, he said. Tell the Valari that they're safe. Kate nodded and sent the message. Down on Desha Prime, Ambassador Relin received the transmission. She read it 3 times before she believed it. The Deathworlders had come, and they had saved them all. 3 weeks after the Battle of Desha Prime, the Galactic Coalition fleet finally arrived. 200 ships emerged from faster-than-light travel, their sensors scanning for the Cathari forces they expected to find. Instead, they found human vessels orbiting the planet. The Valari homeworld was scarred but intact. Millions of lives had been saved. Admiral Keshrel, commander of the Coalition peacekeeping force, stared at his display in disbelief. He was a Theran, a species known for their calm and logical thinking. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for this. The humans, he said slowly. The quarantined humans. They are here. Yes, Admiral, his first officer replied. They arrived 17 days ago. They engaged the Cathari fleet alone. And they won. Keshrel felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear. The quarantine had been designed to contain humanity forever. Their planet was supposed to be isolated, their technology primitive, their presence unknown to the wider galaxy. But someone had called for help. And the humans had answered. Open a channel to their fleet commander, Keshrel ordered. I must speak with them. A moment later, a human face appeared on screen. Keshrel studied the creature carefully. It looked tired but calm, with lines of age around its eyes and gray in its hair. Its expression was neutral, waiting. "I am Admiral Keshrol of the Galactic Coalition Peacekeeping Force. You are in violation of the quarantine protocols established by the Coalition Council. Your presence here is illegal." The human nodded slowly. "I am Commander Jack Morrison of the Terran Expeditionary Force. I understand your concern. But with respect, Admiral, the Valari were dying. They called for help. You were 17 days away. That does not give you the right to break the quarantine." "Maybe not. But I wasn't going to let innocent people die while following rules that made no sense." Morrison leaned forward slightly. "Your coalition knew the Kethari were attacking. You knew the Valari had no defenses. And you sent a fleet that would arrive 3 weeks too late. Why?" Keshrol did not answer immediately. The truth was uncomfortable. The coalition was not designed to prevent wars. It was designed to maintain the balance of power between its member species. Sometimes that meant letting smaller civilizations fall. "The internal politics of the coalition are not your concern," Keshrol said finally. "They are now. We're here, Admiral. We're not leaving. And the Valari have asked us to stay." The conversation continued for another hour, but it changed nothing. The humans would not withdraw. The coalition would not attack them. A fragile peace settled over Thesha Prime as diplomats began arriving from across the galaxy. 1 week later, an emergency session of the Galactic Coalition Council convened at the Central Station. Representatives from 200 species filled the Great Hall, their forms ranging from crystalline beings like the Valari to massive creatures that breathed methane and saw in infrared. The topic was simple: what to do about humanity. Ambassador R'Lin stood at the center of the hall, facing the council. She had prepared her speech carefully, knowing that the next few minutes would determine the fate of 2 species. "Honored representatives," she began, "I speak to you as a survivor. 3 weeks ago, my world was dying. The Kethari had come to destroy us, and we had no way to stop them. We called for help, and the coalition told us that help was coming. But we knew the truth. We knew that by the time your ships arrived, there would be nothing left to save." She paused, letting her words settle over the assembly, and then the humans came. A murmur ran through the hall. Everyone knew the stories about humans. Deathworlders, monsters, creatures from a nightmare, planet who breathed poison and lived in crushing gravity. I will not lie to you. When I learned that the humans were coming, I was terrified. I thought they would finish what the Kethari started. I thought they would enslave us or destroy us or worse. R'Lin's crystalline body flickered with remembered fear. I was wrong. She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of as many representatives as she could. The humans did not come to conquer us. They came to save us. They fought the Kethari fleet with inferior ships and impossible odds. They lost soldiers protecting civilians they had never met. They gave food to our children and buried their dead beside our monuments. Her voice grew stronger. Yes, they are dangerous. Yes, they are Deathworlders. They come from a world that should have killed them, and instead they conquered it. They have fought wars that would terrify us, and they bear scars we cannot imagine. But they choose, every day, every moment, to use that strength to protect the weak. She turned to face the section of the hall where the human delegation sat. Commander Morrison was there, along with Kate Marsh, Danny Cole, Amy Reyes, and several others. They looked small among the alien representatives, but they did not look afraid. The quarantine was a mistake, R'Lin said. You locked away the one species in the galaxy that would answer a stranger's cry for help. You were so afraid of what humans might do that you never considered what they would do. She raised her arms, her body blazing with light. I stand before you as living proof. The humans saved my world. They asked for nothing in return. And I will not let you condemn them for breaking a rule that should never have existed. The hall fell silent. Then, slowly, the Valari delegation began to applaud. Other species joined them, one by one. Not all, but enough. The vote took 3 hours. Every representative had to speak. Some argued that humanity was too dangerous to be trusted. Others pointed out that the humans had proven themselves in ways that words could not. The debate was fierce and complicated. In the end, the vote was close. By a margin of 12 out of 200 voting species, humanity was granted provisional membership in the Galactic Coalition. The quarantine was over. In the gallery, Commander Morrison watched the vote with Kate Marsh beside him. She had tears in her eyes, though she was trying to hide them. "We did it," she said quietly. "We actually did it." Morrison nodded. He thought about Lisa Vance, who had given her life to protect Valari civilians. He thought about the soldiers who had died in the battle. He thought about all the people back on Earth who had no idea what had just happened. "This is just the beginning," he said. "The hard part comes next." "What do you mean?" "We've proved we can fight. Now we have to prove we can be trusted." "That's going to take a lot longer." Kate smiled slightly. "One step at a time, Commander. One step at a time." Outside the council hall, the news spread across the galaxy. In 100 isolated systems, species who had never heard of Earth learned about the Deathworlders who had answered a stranger's call for help. Some were frightened. Some were hopeful. All of them remembered. On Desha Prime, Sergeant Ben Torres sat in a garden near the capital city. The Valari had begun rebuilding, and the crystal flowers were blooming again. Beside him, the child he had met in the shelter played quietly, its light now bright and steady. A Valari adult approached and sat nearby. It was one of the child's parents, a being named Lyrith. They had learned a few words of human language in the past weeks. "Thank you," Lyrith said, the words strange on its crystalline tongue. "For saving my child. For saving all of us." Ben looked at the child, then at the recovering city around them. He thought about home, about Earth, about all the ways humanity had hurt itself and others over the centuries. They had done terrible things. They had also done beautiful things. Maybe that was what it meant to be human. The capacity for both. "You called for help," Ben said simply. "We came. That's what we do." Lyrith did not fully understand, but it felt the truth in the words. Among its people, there was a concept for those who protected the weak, without seeking reward. Guardians, defenders. The humans had become that. For a species they had never met, on a world they had never seen. Far away. In the darkness between stars, the news continued to spread. And for the first time in galactic history, the isolated and afraid began to hope. Because now they knew that when they called for help, someone would answer. Even if it was the Deathworlders. Especially if it was the Deathworlders. The universe had changed. And humanity was just getting started.